Hi folks, Canadian Prepper here. So I want to talk about a shift that I would like to take in my preparedness planning and one that I think you should consider also. So let's get to it. I just want to talk a bit about leadership today. I've never considered myself to be much of a leader, although I seem to inadvertently be taking on that role in some areas of my life. A leader should not be confused with someone who is an expert in their field. There are experts and specialists, then there are leaders. Leaders are there to manage human resources and co-constructively guide them toward a common goal. Now, the leaders of old led from the front. The leaders of old only became leaders with brute alpha strength. That's how they rose to the top, and that's how they became respected. Whereas today, it's the exact opposite. Leaders can lead from the back. They can lead from offices that are far removed from the battlefield. And in some cases, necessarily so, because the goal is to cut the head off the snake. Once you get the king, the whole kingdom collapses. It's convenient that in the modern age, somebody can lead from the shadows without getting their hands dirty. But after the post-collapse reshuffling of the deck, those who emerge to the top are the ones who, at least in the beginning, can lead from the front and see the value in human resources. You see, as preppers, we are very individualistic in the sense that we don't want to lead and we don't want to be led. For the most part, we basically want to be left alone. This, of course, is going to be problematic because, as I've discussed in numerous different videos before, there's going to be power vacuums that are going to be filled by somebody. So if it's not somebody of good intention, it's obviously going to be somebody of bad intention. And while to some degree good and bad are relative terms, I think 90% of people can agree on the core fundamentals of what is right and wrong, as it pertains to the minimizing of human suffering and upholding the utilitarian principle, doing things which promote the greatest good for the greatest amount of people, the golden rule. Things like that are pretty self-evident to most people and hard to refute from a logical perspective. So as preppers, we take the default mode of the LMOs, also known as the last man on earth. That's what they called them in World War Z in the book, which was 20 times better than the movie ever was, where the army, when they were moving across the United States to try to eradicate the zombie threat, they started on the East Coast, I think, and they moved to the West Coast. They encountered what they called LMOs, who gave them a lot of problems. And basically, these LMOs were the preppers. They were kings of their domains. And I'm not saying there's necessarily anything wrong with that, but the problem with that is that, as I've talked about before, you're inevitably going to get choked out by the bigger weeds. So it's imperative that we take the prepping 2.0 perspective, as outlined in a video I did recently, where I talked about how a book I was reading, the protagonist didn't take the viewpoint of, all right, we need to hunker down and take out anybody who comes through the door, don't trust anybody, and only see people as drains on our resources. They took the opposite viewpoint from the get-go, which was, no, we need to embrace human resources. We need to see how people are valuable, and we must be willing to win the trust, loyalty, and respect in the absence of rule of law. This might mean making certain concessions. As a prepper, you are going to be somebody who has resources. You are going to be somebody who possesses knowledge in situations where the vast majority of people aren't going to have the knowledge that they need in order to survive that situation. As much as this is a fantasy some people are relying on to give meaning to their lives, as in hoping that the grid is going to go down so that they can, start anew and be respected for all the knowledge they have and others don't. I'm not talking about people realizing that fantasy. I've long commented on how if you don't have the skills to make it in this world, you probably are going to struggle in any situation, because it's not about I'm good at this and not at that. It's about your ability to adapt. That's what survival's all about. So a person who's adapted and been very successful in this world, so long as they weren't born with a silver spoon in their mouth and they're just not riding on the success of their predecessors, then they should have the wherewithal to put themselves in a good position no matter what the circumstances are. Even if they may lack the skills, they're going to be able to use their networking capabilities in order to get what they need to survive. The difference being that in a post-collapse paradigm shift, people who are good at leading from the back are not necessarily going to be good at leading from the front, putting themselves in harm's way, getting their hands dirty, showing people how it's done. That's how you win people's trust, by putting yourself on the line, by taking the hardest job. That's the only way you win. And you may not last if you do that. That's just a risk you have to take. If anything, you'll be martyred if you are taken out, and you will still be a unifying force for your people. But I would beseech all preppers, survivalists who are very lone wolf, to ask yourself, is there ever a situation where you feel you could lead if you had to? Because there may come a time where you're the only one who possesses the skills required to make frontline decisions. And in doing so, people are naturally going to follow you. Are you going to be comfortable with that? Is that a burden that you're ready to bear? You can be some shut-in who closes the door on the world, but that's old school prepping. We're talking about new school, pragmatic preparedness. If you truly want to have a high quality of life in a prolonged grid down situation, you're going to have to erect a community which can resurrect as much technology as possible to properly defend itself and to have a high quality of life. You can only accomplish that by protecting your people and leading them. Now, like I said, I'm not a leader, but I think there's a leader in every single one of us. Being a positive leader is simply having a good understanding of what you're doing, making decisions that take into consideration the needs of the entire group as a whole before just your own. Leadership is essentially communistic in the sense that you as the leader are putting yourself at the same value level as everybody else. And in some cases, if you're truly leading from the front, which you will have to be when we get sent back several technological eras, like we were when we were hunter-gatherers and the strongest guy was in the front, that's just how it's going to be. The king is not going to be able to hide in the back next to the queen and behind all the pawns. It only works that way after we've established a certain level of sophistication within society. And that doesn't come about immediately after a without rule of law scenario. That takes a long time for it to happen, till the king has the luxury of having lieutenants to fight his battles. And it may not mean leading from the front all the time. Maybe it means leading from the middle, but certainly not leading from the back. People are never going to respect you if you try to pull that shit post-collapse. And there truly is a leader in each and every one of us. So having a good understanding of what you're doing, being open to the advice of your counsel, people who are more knowledgeable than you in certain areas, managing your human resources, their strengths, utilizing your people's best strengths in the best situations, and being willing to die for all of them. That's what makes a leader. And there's very few people in the preparedness community who I really think exemplify that. I think Pastor Joe Fox and Pastor Dowell, even though we don't share the same religious beliefs necessarily, I think those guys are true leaders in their communities from what I've watched on their videos. They're taking people out, they're giving them jobs, they're showing people how to do certain things, and I'm sure there's a lot more people. Those are just the first two guys that come to my head who are doing that. So it's one thing to run out into the wilderness and be the best horticulturalist, the best self-subsisting homesteader there is, but the true power in a grid down scenario comes from somebody's ability to lead. Let me know what you think in the comment section. Please like, comment, subscribe. Thanks for watching. Canadian Prepper out. The best way to support this YouTube channel is to support yourself by gearing up through CanadianPreparedness.com or BugoutRoll.ca. Premium quality gear at the best possible price using the incredibly secure and easy to use Shopify platform. We offer free shipping to the United States for orders over $200 USD and free shipping to Canada over $75. So support the channel by supporting yourself.